On, guys? It's Mark with Limo Marketer here. I'm joined again by Ken Lucci from Driving Transactions. Thanks for coming on again, Ken. Your last video was a hit, a huge hit. I got so many messages about that video. So thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. And you have something for us today, don't you?
Well, I want to talk about pricing strategies. Let me share and pull this up. Let me know when you can see this. I'm going to start over.
Perfect. Yeah. No,
So,
got it.
so one of the biggest issues I see two problems in the business that keep me up at night. One is people who want me to help them sell their business, or they want to borrow money and they don't have their financials in order. And it's getting more difficult to borrow. So we're coming up with a financials course. The second issue I see is people don't know how to price. And we were just talking about this off air. If I go on Facebook one more time and see, oh, I just bought a 2023 Sprinter limo, how much should I charge an hour? I'm going to go out of my mind. I swear to God. But it's people need to look at what their costs are foundationally before they decide what they're going to charge. So we're doing a course, and I just want to run you through the presentation and give your audience some ideas
Yeah.
about okay. So creating winning pricing strategies, to me, it's all about making the right choices to generate profitable revenue. We are obsessed with low price, much more so than our customers are. The only areas of the industry where I think we have to really, really sharpen the pencil is sedans and SUVs. And you can't do that because there's a lot of competition. There's a low barrier to entry.
Exactly.
And you can't do that unless you know your cost. So when I talk about pricing strategies, there's only three. One, you can be a low-cost provider, undercutting everybody in the market. By the way, that's a race to the bottom. That's never a good idea. The second is to be competition-based pricing, meaning I called around and I'm going to be the same or lower than my competition. Okay, well, there's no math behind that. And that really says that you have no more value to deliver than your competitor. I don't believe in that. And the third is to be premium, or what I call value-based, which is knowing your cost, forecasting your expenses and the increases, and planning your profit margins. So knowing the industry expense averages for a comparison's sake, and then measuring how you're doing against those ratios on a monthly basis. Knowing what we call cost of goods by revenue. When we review financial statements for banks or for clients, we put them into a cost of goods format, and I'll take everybody through that. And actively manage your costs and try to work to lower them, okay? Very, very critical, with especially fuel, insurance, maintenance, repairs, etc. So budget and forecast and review your costs and other expenses monthly. So you sell your services based on the value that you provide. And it's how are you better than your low-priced alternatives? We spent last session talking about selling value. Well, this is the other side of that coin, right? This is the side of the coin where you can say to your clients, listen, I just want you to realize why somebody might be lower than me. I have a commercial insurance with X amount of limits. My people are all W-2 employees, they're drug tested, etc. And so selling the value, we talked about that, but this side is knowing the price. And then choose profitable revenue to grow. So if you know that you're making good money on your SUVs or your vans or your minis, then let's grow the business that way, and let's not add more sedans if you're not making enough money on them.
Yeah.
And then there's really no reason to be one or two, and here's why. And I mean this sincerely. We have less than 40% competitors compared to pre-pandemic, and the competition that does exist, we're running about 40% less pieces of equipment than we were in 19. I talked at the state of the industry. Our research shows that the industry lost 30% of its operators within the first 120 days of the pandemic. Then we lost another 20% who couldn't make it through to the hard recovery. So knowing your cost, because knowing that You have much less competition. I think you need to be more confident that you can price a little bit higher, but you should know your prices in order to determine what to charge. So,
So, sorry to interrupt. So 40% less vehicles now compared to 2019
19,
still?
absolutely.
Wow.
Still,
That's
let
a
me tell you.
crazy stat.
Well, let's talk about this. So, if you accept the fact that 50% of our competition is gone, and I'm talking about companies that were relatively sized regionally and even some decent sized regionals, 50% of those companies are gone. And of the companies that remain, a lot of companies sold off their equipment. So what happened after the pandemic was demand slammed us. Okay.
Yeah.
But the problem is capacity comes back one fleet vehicle at a time, one additional driver at a time.
Yep.
So it is our belief, and from a research perspective, almost going state by state. Like California used to have 9,700 players, operators. California today has less than 4,500 operators, and
Whoa.
80% of them are operating less than 5 pieces of equipment. So when we research the areas that are heavily regulated, we validate those stats. Okay. So that's why I think you can be confident with your prices if you know your costs. But here's the biggest problem. Since before the pandemic, all of the direct costs related to our business have increased. Vehicle costs, new vehicles are up 11% on average. Used equipment is up as high as 26%. Those aren't my stats. Those are the auto industry stats.
Yeah.
Driver labor, we can all agree, a driver labor has increased substantially. We believe driver labor will keep going up. I know a lot of guys are paying overtime or they're paying bonuses. So driver labor is up. Vehicle insurance, massively up across the board, 20%. Gas, we all know where we were pre-pandemic now versus the average, which changes weekly, $3.46. Maintenance and repairs, by the way, are up 14% when you can get the part. So if you notice down below, all of these things are the costs associated with doing this business on an industry average. So on an average basis, we are paying between 27 to 31% of our total income to drivers. We're paying 6 to 8% for maintenance and repairs. These are my statistics after looking at 230 companies. So just a word about fuel, by the way. Many of my clients have said, hey, now that fuel is a little bit down, should I get rid of my gas surcharge? The answer is no, because you can't put it back if you if you take it away. The other issue is that's a commodity that's very volatile on a daily basis.
Yep.
Right? So the step one of your pricing strategy is knowing all of your costs. And this is as simple as taking a piece of paper and filling out what is your vehicle cost. Or you can do it by the month if you have a loan on it. How much does your insurance cost? What are you paying your chauffeur as far as a loaded hourly wage with taxes, insurance, etc.? And by the way, these are all industry averages. Your insurance is for about 5 to 8% of your total income on average. Your labor is 27 to 31. When I looked at a company today in California, for example, they were 39% loaded because it's more expensive to operate in.
Oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then your maintenance and repairs will run 2 to 3% each, respectively, and another 1% for detailing. And then your fuel cost is 7 to 9% of income. We know that because we've looked at 230 companies. So
Yeah.
your direct cost, ideally, for you to make a profit, should add up to between 55 to 60% of total revenue. Put more simply, for every $100 in trips that you do, you should be spending no more than $55 to $60 to do that trip when you add all of those things together. So once you know those, you can develop pricing strategies. So here's the most important math of our industry. And I put this in every presentation. When you add up all your total revenue, whether it's for the month or for the year, your direct cost should be no more than 60 cents out of every dollar, or 60%, ideally 55%. That leaves you with a nice gross profit margin of 40 to 45%. By the way, gross profit is the same as what's called net contribution to overhead, which means that for every $100 you take in, you should have 40 to $45 left over so that you can pay off your reservations, dispatching, and supervision
Okay.
and your overhead. That leaves you with a 10% profit. Okay.
Got it. Okay. And that's what you should be shooting for.
1,000%. The best operated companies that we have reviewed out of 230 companies, the best have been able to post a greater than 15% profit. Okay.
And you're talking about, sorry to interrupt, larger
No.
businesses that might be doing a few million a year. Obviously, if it's a smaller business, I'm
going to tell you, smaller companies should be able to post 15% net ordinary income all day long. Absolutely.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
all starts, remember, it all starts with this. If you calculate out your vehicle costs, your insurance costs, your chauffeur direct labor, your maintenance and fuel, that's the number you need to see. You need to
Okay.
see that out of every $100 that you charge, you need to see that you're not over 55 to 60%. So, but I've looked at companies from 500,000 to 150 million a year. No exaggeration. 230 companies times 5 years of financial statements. The smallest was probably 500K. The largest was 150 million. The sweet spot of the industry, it's tough to say. There are a lot of companies that are $1 million companies, but I'd say the top 10% are 5 million and above, and we've seen quite a few of them. But it's easier to calculate all this stuff when you're smaller. Size does not always make profitability. So how do you become one of those top 10% that shows a greater than 10% net income? Know all of your direct costs, price to achieve a minimum of 40 to 45% gross margin, use much more technology. Here's what I mean by that. The more things that you can push to your online booking tool, the better off you are. The more quotes you can do electronically and then even follow them up manually, but the more tech you can use, the better off you are. Keep your administrative very low. What's administrative or overhead? It's simple. It's all of the expenses of your business that have nothing to do with creating revenue, right? So your direct costs are your fuel, your insurance, your maintenance, your vehicle cost, etc. But your overhead is literally that. It is overhead. It is administrative costs that have nothing to do with creating revenue. And then you should use your cost-based pricing as the lowest possible pricing structure. I am a big advocate of having 3-tiered pricing. And by the way, if there's only a few sprinters in your market, for example, or there's only a few stretch limousines in your market, once you know your costs, price them higher, okay, so that you can get a higher gross margin. So here are some of the strategies above and beyond being low cost, competitive cost, or value cost. Demand-based pricing, which we'll talk about. Competition-based pricing, which I hate, by the way. Value-based, which is my favorite. And then I like to sell based on psychology, and we'll talk about what that is.
Hey, quick question, Ken. Before we jump further, can you go back to last slide for just a second?
Yep.
So I had a question. So, in our last presentation, which I'll link to at the end of this video, we were talking about, the right questions asked on the phone. It was more of a sales focused thing, right?
Yep.
So I get a lot of clients asking me, hey, should I be using like online booking tools? And I tell them, yes, you 100% want that. It'll cut down your costs.
Yep.
But for those initial inquiries coming through, I tell all of them, I typically recommend making a phone call, especially for those leads that they might have an email and, maybe it's someone who works at a law office. Yes, they can book online, but contacting them and kind of making that connection first, figuring out who they are is important because, like you said on our last video, you never know. That might be someone who uses these services a lot. It might be a business traveler. It could be someone who manages bookings, at a law office or something for all of the attorneys.
No
And
question about it. Let's step back. I agree with you. I think booking tools today are incredibly important. Now, what you do with that quote, what you do with that inquiry is even more important because let's face it, you paid money to get that quote. You paid money to get that inquiry. If you don't then pick up the phone, even if they book, it's great to if that once they book, it's great to say, listen, I noticed you booked us online. You're a first client. My name is Ken. I'm the owner. If you need anything, let me know, and I'm going to
yeah,
follow up with you to make sure our service was okay. More importantly, if they come through PPC and they go to your quoting tool, they create a quote, but they don't book. It's even more important for you to pick up the phone and say, tell me something. I noticed you did a quote with us. Is there some questions I can answer for you because, we kind of sell out. We can sell out quickly and I don't want you to miss out. So making that phone call to find out who they are, what prompted the phone call, what did they do before they called us today, right? How often they use that service. You can't get that through a booking tool. The booking
no,
tool, I love the booking tool because it creates a huge net, right? It's our
yeah,
big funnel, but it does not replace the personal service. Now, when I say use more technology, which is number three, I'm a huge advocate of once somebody becomes your client and you say, you're our client, um, you have our corporate pricing structure. Let me come out and show you how to use our booking tools so that you can book online. Or let me come show you how to use our app. I will get you a user ID. Let's do a Zoom call. Let's set it up. Let's do our first call together because believe it or not, we spend 6% of our total business income on reservations and dispatch.
yeah,
If you can move what I call your vanilla ice cream reservations online, okay, and you can afford to charge a corporate rate. You can actually even afford to say to a client down the road, listen, we have two prices. One is if you book online, and the
yeah,
second is if you
mhm,
call us. We're not there today, but that's what the airlines do. Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, I think that's a critically important uh, statement to make because the quoting tools do not replace us as the salespeople, right?
Exactly.
Right. It creates this huge funnel for us, but at the end of the day, this is an interesting statistic. 28%, you can get a 28% increase in your sales if you pick up the phone and you make a call. That's not my stat. That is a stat from one of the largest online e-commerce consulting firms, and they specialize in e-commerce technology. And they recognize once the lead comes through the door, you actually can increase sales by 28% by picking up the phone.
Yep.
Especially, I would want to know why somebody didn't buy from me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, totally, totally. Yeah.
exactly.
So
So
thank you for covering that. I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt
no,
this. I
no,
know
no,
it's
no,
pricing
no, not at
strategies,
all.
but very important to cover because I always get that question. So
No, you can't. And I think listen, I know as businesses, we have a lot of choices to make in as far as what we do. I can tell you, finding out who the person is, why they need us, how often they use us, what goes into their consideration. Okay, you cannot accomplish that with a quoting tool. I used an example out in Vegas, which is a true story. I actually had a client and I used their booking tool and I asked for a quote from the most expensive hotel in the city to go to an FBO private plane. And I put in the comments that I need to be at my private plane by 11 o'clock. Please let me know if picking me up at 9:30 is good enough. Never got a phone call. All I got was a price for an SUV. No one ever followed up with me.
wow.
I actually, I got two automated emails asking me if I wanted to book. The second, the second thing I did with that same client was I have a friend that works for the largest corporation in that particular city. And I asked her to put on a quote, a 5-hour charter out in a Sprinter. And I said, listen, she put in the notes that we're entertaining a corporate client and we would like to know more about your Sprinter. All she got back was the price and 2 automated emails. No one called to say, tell me who you are. Let me ask you something. What brought you to our website today? What have you done before this? And how can I make this a success for you? Okay.
Yeah,
So you're
that's
right.
it.
I mean, it's true. Okay. So pricing is not literally, it's not very difficult. Once you know your cost structure, this should be your most foundational tool that you use to determine whether you're going to have one price or 3-tiered pricing. The second strategy is demand pricing, which we don't do enough of. I believe as an industry we should do more of. We'll get into that
Yeah,
a little bit.
totally.
Competition based, I'm not interested in pricing the way my competition is, because my competition does not have my expenses. I want to
Yeah.
know what they're charging only so that I can tell my clients why I'm a better value. And then to me, the most profitable is to sell based on value and psychology and to sell bundles. We'll talk a little bit about that. So start with cost based and then deploy several methods. Now, here's an example. Demand-based pricing, even for sedans and SUVs, okay, you can do surcharges for early morning pickups, late night pickups, or high traffic periods. You can do add-ons for inside greets, in-vehicle amenities. We actually offered a wake-up call service, and we also charged when we did groups and meetings for manifest management. More importantly, if I was in a larger city that had sporting events, concert venues, convention centers, I would create greenouts based on knowing what's going on in my city. I would create areas where I charged a premium if there were a combination of, let's say, Major League Baseball that for
Mm.
the night, and then maybe there was a big concert or an event. Okay. It's not just for Super Bowl, by the way. The
Yeah.
other way, the other thing you should look at is if in your market there are only a few stretch limousines, maybe you have a classic Rolls Royce or you have a limo bus or something more exotic, you can afford to be 20% high. Remember, we're trying to hit a 40 to 45% gross profit. So if you have a vehicle that you can charge more for, it gives you a blended gross profit margin rate. And the way I looked at this is I know it was difficult in today's reservation software. We used to create a Google Calendar, and we used to every week the reservationists would have to open up the calendar to see what was going on in the market and to know whether or not we had a surcharge going. Spring training in Florida, you always had surcharges going on because, I mean, it was high season in Florida. And I
Yeah.
know that, in larger cities where you have both concert venues and Major League Sports, the same thing. Now, I will say demand pricing can be challenging to use an instant online quoting tool. Look, there are 2 fantastic quoting tools in our industry right now, and there's a third one that's coming up. The add-ons is fantastic through Limo Anywhere. The
Yep.
chat bot apparently is just being put on Santa Cruz, and then I
Yep.
know for a fact that Fast Track is working on one, and Livery Coach has a pretty good one. So demand pricing, to me, here's where I see instant opportunities for demand pricing. Okay. We believe that you can make a list and get to 1,000 opportunities a year per vehicle per service line. If you have a prior to 6 a.m., early a.m. pickup, you do a surcharge for that. And when people ask you why, I say, listen, this is not so that I can make a profit, okay, an extra profit. This is so I can entice my staff to get up early and take the
Exactly.
early shift.
Yeah.
People need to understand this is going to the working man. This is
Yeah.
not going to you. Now, what also helps is if you are marketing to the concerts or you are marketing on social media that such and such an entertainer is coming to town, reserve your SUV for the concert, or you have large events, etc. You can absolutely charge more for it. So we think there's about 1,000 opportunities. Very critical when in your marketplace there is a shortage of larger equipment or shortage of vans. You should know who's got every sprinter in your market. You should know who's got
Yeah,
stretches. And
totally.
I'm not talking about 20-year-old stretches. I'm talking about real competition.
Yeah,
Competition-based pricing, this is really a slippery slope. You can either be greater than, less than, or equal to. Okay. There's no imagination to be equal to, because now you've said, I'm no better than Joe's limo service. All you have to do is describe, again, like we said last week or the last session, why should someone pay 10 to 15% more for your service? People tell me that we're a slightly higher price, but let me ask you a question. Why did you call us today? Because your other company went out of business, or your other company left you at the airport or didn't show up. That's the difference. We have to be a little bit higher pricing, but I'll tell you what, we'll set you up as a corporate account, and we'll watch your volume, and why don't you and I visit together, talk about all of your transportation needs. When we get a little further down the road, if I can do better, I will for you. The key is, if you can be greater than. No one ever walked out of a restaurant because the steak was 10% or 15% higher, because they like the ambiance, they like the value, they like the atmosphere, etc. You've got to get people to feel the same way about you. Competitively priced. When I go to sell companies, when we do an analysis, if I've got somebody that is low in the lowest in the market, they are the most difficult to sell.
sure.
Value-based pricing, it again, this is what we talked about the last time. You start with knowing your costs, and then you answer these questions for yourself. Why am I worthy of being paid more? How are we better than our competition? Why do people like the client calling in use us over other people? And how do we solve their problems? Anyone with a tangibly better, higher quality service can command 10, I'm going to even say up to 15% higher. And by
Yeah.
the way, you don't have to be low price on things the client uses a few times a year. You should have to be the most competitively priced, or the most priced value-wise, for the sedans and SUVs. We all know that. That's the milk
Yeah.
and bread of our industry. But let me tell you what about corporate buying. We talked about it the last time, but it's very important to put yourself, when you're trying to sell value, put yourself in the shoes of the person who's calling, okay? And ask what problems you're solving. By the way, if it was the ride from point A to point B, if that was really the problem they were going to solve, they wouldn't call us. They would call the taxi, because the taxi is lower price. Okay. They want reliability, they want quality, they want safety. Those are all value propositions that you can design a sentence around. Okay.
Nice.
So this requires you to literally nothing more than sit and write up on a sheet of paper why you think your company is worthy of being paid more. What problems do we solve for the corporate client versus the private client? I can tell you that our competition, people think our competition to the airport is Uber. No, it's not. Less than 4% of Uber's transportation is either to or from an airport. It's a misnomer. You can read it right in their annual report. They are not trusted to do by reservation work when someone absolutely has to make a flight. That's our domain. So the
Yeah.
value proposition is, you know what? Some people tell me we're slightly higher when they first start to use us, but let me tell you why. X, first of all, is our commercial insurance. This is what we have over some other companies. We keep a higher insurance level. We have W-2 employees. We have the latest equipment. We have a 24-hour operation. We wake up our chauffeurs with technology. We have a great booking tool, etc. So all you have to do is train your salespeople, or your reservation staff, I call them salespeople, on what are the value proposition. Being a family-owned operation in this, in the environment of automated, press one for this, press two for that, being a family run operation is a great benefit. Or being a smaller company that you can say to your clients, look, you're talking directly to the owner. I will take care of you, as they say, the buck stops here. So it's not that bigger is better or the best piece of equipment is gonna, is the best thing to have, because anybody can go out and get a brand new piece of equipment. It's the value that you bring to the table that you need to literally spell out. Psychology-based selling is my favorite. Okay. When I think of psychology-based, the first thing I think about is wedding sales. Okay. Or a night out. And I call it paint a picture pricing. Okay. So if I'm talking to someone who's, tell me something, why the book, why did you go, what are you doing with that stretch limousine on Friday night? Oh, you know what? My girlfriend is getting married, so we're throwing her a bachelorette party. You are absolutely going to love this. I will make a note to have the chauffeur take group photos of you. If you want to use your smartphone, you could do that, or he'll use his smartphone and the company will send photos to you. Now, I can imagine you and your friends having a great time. Do you want me to have, ice in the back? Are you thinking you're going to bring your own alcohol? What are you thinking you'd like me to have ready for you? So you're making an assumed sale, but you are painting the picture. We used to say, when we were selling we used to have a Rolls Royce Phantom, but it works with pretty much anything these days. We would say, this is your one and only special day. This is the most important day of your life. Ask your photographer to take pictures of you coming out of the vehicle. This is going to be the $1 million photo that you're going to have on your mantle forever. And we are wedding specialists. You do not want someone who doesn't understand the cadence of a wedding. We do more weddings in the area than anybody. But psychology-based selling works for anything. Okay. Why
Yeah.
are you why are you calling us today? Well, my wife and I are going out on vacation. That's terrific. We are early morning specialists. I would not want you to miss your flight. We have an on-time guarantee. We do electronic wake-up calls of our chauffeurs in the morning. We have a backup chief chauffeur in case there's ever a problem. We will get you your flight on time. From a corporate perspective, let me tell you, corporate's my favorite because it's not their money that they're spending.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
The key there is, tell me something. How many people do you book for? I only book for my boss. Well, your boss is going to be happy that you called us. He's going to be on time. If they say, well, our last service was less expensive. Well, you're obviously calling us because they let you down. What is the cost if your boss is late? What if he's embarrassed and the car's not there and he's not picked up? We will not let you down. I assure you, we will not let you down. And we will create a corporate pricing structure for you as you continue to use us. So psychology-based selling, I call it paint a picture selling, paint a picture pricing. The other thing is put yourself in the shoes of that person. What's important to them? Because if it was just a ride from point A to point B at the cheapest price, they wouldn't be calling a chauffeured service. Okay,
Yeah.
so here's my favorite guy in the world when it comes to psychology of selling. Brian Tracy invented psychology of selling, and I went through his course. Anybody can go out and buy that book. If you want to learn about psychology-based selling, selling value, selling based on solving problems, that is the best read that you could ever have. By the way, you can also buy a book on tape, but I myself like to do it the old-fashioned way and highlight stuff underneath. But that is literally probably the best investment you could make, unless you want to compete on low price and you don't want to make any money. So
Yeah, I've listened to that one two or three times, I think. I need to read it because I remember better when I read, but
I
incredible book.
reread. Yeah, he's on my list to reread. Right now I'm working on a book I'm reading a book called Calmfidence, CALMFIDENC. It's about it calmly having confidence when you're presenting. So this is something that I think even smaller companies, the beauty of the industry or where we are today in business is you could put together a beautiful website with great quoting tool, and you can have live chat that literally rings to your cell phone, and you look more professional than even the big companies. I firmly recommend that you start using a different new ordering policies, parameters, and terms that are more tech-based. So incentivize the use of ordering either online, on your app or an online portal. Definitely put chat assist on your website. Educate your clients on technology for tracking so that they're not calling into the office saying, "Where's my car?" Use the care alerts. I mean, every software out there has them. Incentivize the use of the web portal and show your corporate clients how to use the web portal to get things like receipts or to make online booking. No one should call you looking for a ride receipt they had 3 weeks ago. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Incentivize pre-ordering or prepayment. I just worked with a client who asks every single one of his private clients how many times they go to the airport a year, and he recommends that they buy a book of 5 round trips, and he sends them an electronic coupon book of 5 round trips because he says to them, "I can give you 15% off if you prepay them in advance, and they will stay on my books until you use them. They do not expire."
I like
Uh,
that.
I thought he was pretty cool in doing it. That wasn't my idea. That was it.
No, that's great.
Add a fee for less than 12-hour notice on trips. Now, I know you can't do that with all your corporate clients, but I'll tell you what you can do. You can say, "Listen, technically I'm supposed to charge you an additional fee for less than 12-hour notice. I'm not going to do it this time, but do me a favor. When you book your flight, please call and book us. Even if something changes, you can make a change."
Yeah.
Add a fee. Eventually, add a fee for phone and email reservations. Add a fee for paper billing. Carrying receivables is very expensive. And by the way, I'm seeing a lot of people today that are charging the 3% card processing fee. Um, again, I also see people that are giving discounts for buying, the round trip ticket. Add a fee for the holiday and early morning, and just tell your clients the reason why we have an additional fee for before 6 a.m. or on holidays is so that I can pay my drivers and incentivize them to get up to work. If you're using affiliates, I constantly hear that people can't get charges from affiliates. To me, if you're doing affiliate work, you should be able to generate the final close out the trip the same day and not have people chase you for your affiliate trips.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of inside baseball, but the industry in general is going to same platform. With GNet, it gives you the ability to do two-way driver communication. Not tremendously important, but believe it or not, it saves you a lot of tracking time. And what I'm saying here is some people will say, "Well, I can't charge my clients extra. I can't charge my clients an early morning fee." Well, I got to tell you something. You can with your new clients. If you know when they buy, if you know when they fly, you can design your pricing around them. The most important thing is to train your new clients how you want them to order from you. If you've got any one of the softwares today, they should be able to book what I call their vanilla ice cream jobs, their trips online. Okay,
Yeah.
because it's as simple as that. But you've got to, if you want to be married to your telephone, don't follow the advice I'm giving you. But if you want to have more free time to sell and you want to have more jobs coming in through your website, you've absolutely got to put all this technology on your website.
Yeah.
So, couple things. Here's some homework. We should not be charging the same price for every client. I am a believer in 3-tiered pricing: column A, column B, and column C. And if you do affiliate work, there's column 4. But start by, on a piece of paper, writing down all of your costs. I'm going to send this presentation to you. So Mark, you can give this out and they can look at all of their categories, but your lowest tier pricing should be, what does my sedan cost me a month? What is the fuel it uses? What does the insurance cost me? What's the repair? I mean, I'm going to just give you a statistic. You need a new set of tires every 35,000 miles. Okay. Anybody can calculate in what the cost of a set of tires cost every year. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can determine how many jobs that you did last year to determine what your average is. Or if you say, "You know what, I'm averaging doing 3 trips today." Okay. Well, You'll be shocked when you know your pricing structure, when you know how much that vehicle costs you to sit idle, whether it's by the month, by the week, or by the day, or by the hour. Just write out all your costs. If they need help, I have no problem helping someone. We have a course coming out. Just watch for it. It'll be coming out, I would say, over the next 30 days. But start by knowing your cost structure. Calculate your direct costs. Your goal, again, is that your cost of everything it takes to turn the key, to deliver the service, the driver, the fuel, the maintenance, the repairs, the vehicle, the insurance, should not cost you any more than 55 to 60%. It should give you a blended gross profit margin above 40%. Review all of your other expenses. I cannot tell you how overhead creeps. Okay. If you're not careful, you have to watch every month or your overhead is going to creep and it's going to rob your year-end profits from you. Meet with your team and develop advanced pricing strategy. Develop even the simplest on demand. I don't care if it's, listen, anybody after 12 midnight or before 6 a.m., we're going to do a $10 charge. Because,
Yeah.
and just say, it's to pay my people so that they're incentivized to get up and to do this work. Develop value pricing based on your differentiators. And let me tell you, it does not have anything to do with size. You can be that guy for the best lawyer in your town. And before you know it, you'll have 5 of his friends. But
Yeah.
you have to develop value. That's it.
Awesome. That's yeah, that's
I know it's a
incredible.
lot. I know it's a lot, but you know what it starts with? Knowing how much you spend for things. I was at a meeting, I gave that presentation in a more detailed version at the Philadelphia Regional Limousine Association. And on the way out, I noticed there's a guy out front with a 2022 Escalade, brand spanking new. And he said to me, this thing cost me $97,000. I said, how are you pricing it? Well, everybody in my market is typically about, I'm like, dude, you're killing me. You just
That's how everyone says it. Like
dude, you're
whenever I
killing
talk to someone, they always say that. But
me.
yeah,
Right.
cost base. I love value base, right? Like in my business, it's all about value based pricing, and the only way you can do that is if, like you said, you know what sets you apart. Because I always hear
Absolutely.
people are so cheap. Well, it's like, well, if they call you up then and you're charging a higher rate, so what's the deal? What sets you apart? And most can't answer that question, right?
Right. They can if it's conversational with me because, this is a perfect example. I just added a 2022 Escalade to my fleet. I don't really pay attention to what my competition is doing. I just know I have the best maintained equipment. They're cleaned every single day. They're cleaned between rides. They're sanitized between rides. I have W-2 employees. I'm a 24-hour operation. I have more commercial insurance than the minimum that's required by law. So you can just sit and write down exactly why you deserve to have more value. And no one, listen, we talked the last time about the first criteria for the average person is the quality of the service, right?
Yeah.
The second is the reliability, and then the third becomes the price. There are some people that price is entirely everything. Those aren't really our client. That's not
No.
our client. And
And oh yeah, no. And one thing I wanted to mention though, because um, yeah, so and I'm sure you heard this. There's features and benefits, right?
yep,
Always remember if you're saying something, well, our insurance costs are higher.
but the
Well,
benefit
what
is
that's gonna do for them, right? It's like, well,
right,
if something happens,
right.
especially if it's a corporate client, they very well might care about that more, but also figuring out who would care about that benefit as much, right?
We
So
are the safest way to go to the airport, and here's why. You're
yeah,
absolutely correct. And the sad part is the only way people typically find out that that's important is they read in the newspaper that there was an accident and the motorist was uninsured, etc. But if in general, if you identify your persona of who your client is, who's your ideal client, okay, you can turn it around on the client as well. Doctor, you tell me that you're a cardiologist. Let me ask you a question. When someone comes to see you, do they ask you what your price is? No, because you're the best at what you do. So
yeah,
am I. That's why I'm 10% or 15% or However, that's why I'm a little bit higher. A lot of people tell me that before they use us. Then when they use us, they realize why they left their old company in the first place. Again, we are the ones that are obsessed with price more than our client because, especially on the sedans and SUVs, we think we have to be the lowest. No, you don't. But
Yeah.
it starts with being confident in knowing what your cost structure is. And when you look at all of the things we just talked about, every single one of us knows our labor's gone way up, our insurance has gone way up, the maintenance and repair. I have a client who's had an SUV sitting at the dealership for 5 weeks now, waiting for a part. He's scouring, looking for parts himself. So especially in the lower profit margin vehicles, you need to know what your cost structure is. We're
Oh,
always going to have the gross margin challenges with the sedans and SUVs. The key there is know your structure, know your costs, and then go after the right clients with them. 25 wealthiest zip codes, the professional client categories, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, financial planners, and the larger corporations, because they want the job done right. And maybe their purchasing department is going to quibble with price, and you have to go in and you have to say to them, you know what, I'd like to sit down and meet with you to talk about your volume, talk about your needs, talk about how you use transportation. And then we can talk about a corporate pricing structure.
yeah.
If you know that they're going to have groups and meetings coming in, or they have people coming in for training, or they're going to, they're going to use you 50 times, of course, we can work out some sort of a volume discount, but not unless you know what's going on with that client. You
No.
know, I always say, I don't want to work hard for somebody who's only in town for one time and they're only using me to the airport because it's early morning and they can't get Uber. That's not
Yeah.
what I'm doing. That's not my
No.
client.
There's no
So
money in that. And
no,
I'll say to anyone who's watching this, watch the last video because it's good to know your costs, right? Because it might not even be worth it to send that vehicle out with the prices you're charging. And in order to charge more, you got to watch the last video to figure out how to sell
absolutely.
your services, right?
Selling value, and I always tell people, profit is the only progress. And movement, don't confuse movement with progress. I said this at the show. Okay. Movement is not necessarily progress. Just moving that piece of equipment, that's an old mentality. Okay.
Yeah.
To me, profit is the new growth. It's more important how much money you keep than it is how many trips did you do today. It's how much money did we keep, because it's getting so difficult to make a living or to make a profit.
Uh,
So definitely selling value and knowing your cost, the two things go hand in hand.
Yeah, I have some clients or a lot of my clients tell me, larger operators that they do the sedan and SUV work just to keep their chauffeurs, full time.
Yep, yep.
And, they make most of their money on the other vehicles because yeah, it can be cutthroat in that business just because the cost of entry is, like you said, so low, right?
Very low. Think of it. My dad was in the grocery business, so I equate most business with that. So I think of sedans and SUVs as the milk and bread of the industry, right? It's the milk and bread. But a grocery store doesn't make money unless they're making money on their meat, their deli, their dry goods. They can afford to be slightly less expensive on their milk and bread if they're selling those other things,
That's
right?
funny. I didn't know that reference, by the way. You kept
Yeah.
saying milk and bread. I'm like, I've heard meat and potatoes, but
No,
I'm
milk and
like,
bread.
what is milk and bread?
Right. Now, why do you think convenience stores are always so much higher on milk and bread? Because that's the only thing that they have to sell. It's a convenience item. But when you own a department store or a grocery store, there are certain categories that it's expected for you to be an advertised low price, right? That's your milk.
Interesting.
That's your milk and bread. But you
Huh.
never make a profit, okay, unless you sell the meat and sell the
Yeah. Higher
deli and sell
margin
the dry goods.
items.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, yeah, I definitely recommend that they look at both of these things together and look out for our course where we have a full Excel workbook on the cost strategy structure. So you'll be able to plug in everything, but that's coming a little bit down the road. We should have it out within 30 days because to
Awesome.
me, it's pretty critical. I worry about the new guys coming into the business thinking, okay, I did a trip, 2 trips today, and I made $500. Well, no, you didn't. You made what's left over, and we want to
Yeah.
make sure that we want to make sure there's plenty left over for you. That's the big key.
No, totally. So Ken, where can people find you? Like on Facebook,
So
drivingtransactions.com?
drivingtransactions.com is the name of my business. My email is klucci, Lucci. It's a different, drivingyouриncome.com is my
Oh,
email address, driving your income. But we also have a form on the website. And I will be announcing the course on Facebook, and we will be doing an e-blast. I have, I don't know, let's see, this many people from the Las Vegas show that are interested in the
whew,
finance course. Yeah,
nice.
that course is on setting up your financial statements, because my goal in life is to help everybody be bankable so that when they want to grow their business, they can go to a local bank and get a loan,
Yeah.
and also on the pricing to make sure that they know how much money that they're making. Because I don't know, it's a pet peeve of mine. Everybody wants to tell me about, they just bought this piece of equipment for, I used to buy SUVs, Escalades for 65,000 when I was in the business, and people thought I was crazy. Now they're 105, 108,
Yeah.
110. It's very important that you charge enough money for them.
Yeah,
So anyway,
exactly.
all right, sport. I got to head to a
Awesome.
4 o'clock.
All right. Good talking to you, Ken.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Okay. See ya.